The crystalline spires of Drakthor gleamed under the twin suns, casting rainbow shadows across the courtyard where Silvara stood alone. Her scales, unlike the traditional crimson and gold of her kind, shimmered in pure liquid silver. A mutation, they called it. An aberration in the ancient bloodlines of the Draconian Empire. "The marriage is dissolved," High Chancellor Vexmore announced, his golden scales catching the light as he turned his back on her. "The House of Ember will not bind their son to this." Silvara's claws dug into her palms, but she refused to let the tears fall. This was the third rejection in as many months. 3 arranged marriages, 3 families who took one look at her silver scales and found them wanting. In a society where color denoted prestige, power, and purity of bloodline, she was an anomaly. A beautiful mistake, the other Draconians whispered as she walked through the market districts. Some pitied her. Most simply stared, their reptilian eyes calculating her worth and finding it lacking. Even her own family had grown distant, ashamed of the daughter who could not secure a proper match. But the galaxy was changing. The Draconian Empire, once isolated in their superiority, had been forced to join the Galactic Council after the Void War. And with that membership came humans. Commander James Chen of the Terran Diplomatic Corps arrived on Drakthor with little fanfare. Humans were still a curiosity, these strange, soft-skinned bipeds who had somehow survived in the galaxy's most hostile sectors without scales, claws, or natural weapons. What they lacked in physical power, they made up for in stubborn tenacity and an almost reckless creativity. James had been briefed on Draconian customs, but nothing prepared him for the sight of Silvara. He first saw her in the Imperial Archives, where she worked as a historical preservationist. Most Draconians considered it lowly work, beneath their warrior culture. But Silvara had found peace among the ancient texts and holographic records. She was cataloging a collection of pre-Empire artifacts when she sensed someone watching. Turning, she found the human standing in the doorway, his dark eyes wide. "I'm sorry," James said, speaking in heavily accented Draconian. "I didn't mean to stare. It's just, you're magnificent." Silvara's secondary eyelids flickered in confusion. "You must be mistaken, human. I am like liquid moonlight," James interrupted, stepping closer. "On Earth we have stories of dragons, mythical creatures of power and wisdom, but none of our legends described anything as beautiful as you." Heat flushed through Silvara's scales, a biological response she couldn't control. "You don't understand. My coloring is a defect. I am unmarriageable." James tilted his head. A gesture she was learning meant confusion in humans. "Unmarriageable? You're probably the most stunning being I've seen since leaving Earth. What's wrong with silver?" "Everything," Silvara said bitterly. "Silver is not a bloodline color. It has no history, no prestige. I am a genetic dead end." The human was quiet for a moment, then he laughed, a warm, genuine sound that echoed through the archives. "You know what humans say about silver? It's the color of the moon, of starlight, of hope and darkness. Silver is precious because it's rare. Where I come from, you'd be considered extraordinary." Over the following weeks, James found reasons to visit the archives frequently. He asked Silvara about Draconian history, about the artifacts she preserved, about her life. And slowly, impossibly, she found herself looking forward to his visits. He told her about Earth, about oceans and forests, about a species that had clawed its way from extinction events and ice ages, about people who saw difference not as defect but as beauty. He showed her images of Earth's moon, hanging silver in a black sky. "That's what you remind me of," James said one evening as they stood on the archive's observation deck. "Earth's moon, constant, beautiful, pulling at our tides and our hearts. Humans have written millions of poems about the moon. We've dreamed of reaching it for thousands of years. Silver isn't a flaw, Silvara. It's magic." When the Draconian High Council announced another arranged marriage for Silvara, this time to a lower house family desperate for any alliance, James did something unprecedented. He invoked an obscure Galactic Council provision and formally requested to court her himself. The council chamber erupted in chaos. "A human?" Chancellor Vexmore's voice dripped with disdain. "You would bind yourself to a creature without scales? Without wings? Without honor?" "I would bind myself," Silvara said, her voice steady as she stepped forward, "to someone who sees my worth, not my color, James stood beside her, this small, fragile human who somehow seemed larger than any draconian in the room. My species survived because we learned to value what others rejected. We found strength in diversity. Looking at Silvara, I don't see a defect. I see evolution. I see someone unique in all the galaxy. The council debated for hours, but ultimately they could not refuse without violating treaty provisions. The courtship was approved. As they left the chamber together, Silvara spread her wings, vast and silver, catching the light like captured starlight. James looked up at them in wonder. "You know," he said, grinning, "on Earth, we have this saying, all that glitters is not gold. Sometimes, the most precious things are silver." Silvara lowered her head until her snout was level with his face. In the human custom he'd taught her, she smiled, an expression draconians rarely used. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me." "Thank you," James replied, "for being extraordinary." Behind them, the twin suns set over Drakthor, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. But Silvara's scales caught the light differently, silver and perfect, exactly as they were meant to be. And for the first time in her life, she understood that worth was not determined by bloodlines or tradition. Sometimes, it took an outsider, a human who had crossed the stars, to see what had been there all along: perfection in imperfection, beauty in difference, and love where no one else had thought to look. The galaxy was changing indeed. And perhaps, Silvara thought as James took her clawed hand in his small, soft one, it was changing for the better.